Thank you for joining me. You looking well?
Absolute pleasure. You're looking great too.
And just remind me where you're calling in from, Arvid. Where are you currently?
In Berlin. I'm in Germany right now. That's where I live. Yeah, time zones. Funny enough, that always was a big thing for us in our business at Feedback Panda too.
Yeah.
Because like we were living in Berlin, and our customers were in the United States, but they were teaching for a Chinese company, so it was all over the place. Like it was. We were perfectly settled in the middle. That was really cool. Like a normal day, 9 to 5 for us was it just mapped perfectly into the time slots for both the American people that we served and the Chinese customers that they served. It was.
First of all, I want to say thank you for joining me. I know that you're a very busy guy at the moment and have recently invested a lot of time into getting your book Zero to Sold Out, which I want to say congratulations on. It seems to have been extremely well received in the maker, bootstrapper community, along with obviously general software folks, because I think what's going to be really useful for this conversation is it's going to apply to such a wide range of people, whether you're actually thinking about building a product for the first time and you're wondering like how to go about it, through to actually having a successful business or kind of getting towards that stage and you're actually thinking about like, is this something which you could potentially sell? And maybe you're coming on to your next idea. So that's why this is awesome. And I'm sure this is going to apply to a lot of people. So from your side, just wanted to get like a quick overview of how's it been for you actually writing the book and getting out there into the wild? How's that process been? Or before that, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself?
Oh, sure. I mean, I was born in 1985 now. Let's just really go with the whole entrepreneurial journey, I guess. I started software development when I was a kid, essentially, right? I'm a programmer by choice from like 9th grade. And I always dabbled in lots of things. I studied computer science at some point and failed. Like I didn't get a degree. And then I studied something else, didn't finish that, didn't get a degree, just worked in interesting jobs that I found by being connected with people. And then started a couple of businesses over the last decade that went pretty much nowhere. Some imploded, some just slogged off into the distance and were never seen again, that kind of stuff. And in 2017, finally, after a decade and a half, I guess, of trying to get something out, I co-founded a business called Feedback Panda with Danielle. She's my girlfriend and partner, both in life and business. She was an English online teacher. More specifically, she was an English as a second language online teacher working for a Chinese kid English company who sold English online classes to Chinese parents who wanted their kids to learn English taught by a native English speaker. So that was our niche.
Got it.
Like
good niche.
We were talking a lot about niches today. At least I hope so, because it's important to me. And we tried to be very, very specific, and we had to be because she had a problem. She was teaching, right? She was teaching from her home, like all of her colleagues working for this Chinese school. She was teaching 10 hours a day through something like Skype, but web-based, which these Chinese companies offered. And every 25 minutes, there was one lesson, one kid, 25 minutes, she would need to write feedback. Student feedback for the parents to read, so they knew like what they did in the class and what they could practice for next class, all these kind of little things. And Chinese parents really want to know. It's not like that their parents who say, whatever. They really want to know. So you better write something meaningful. And that turned out to take a lot of time. And if you teach for 25 minutes and you only have 5 minutes after that to recuperate, get a coffee, go use the restroom, and then you still have to write like 4 paragraphs of text, doesn't work. So what Danielle figured is that she needed to do these things after her day of teaching. And what we noticed was that all other teachers had the exact same problem. If they were teaching any meaningful amount of time, they had to spend an hour or 2 hours of extra unpaid work every single day to get the student feedback done. And it was mandatory. Like you had to field student feedback within 12 hours of teaching the class, or you wouldn't get paid. That was the level of intensity. And you can already feel this feels like a critical problem. This is something that has to be solved either by writing fast or building your own little system if you're a teacher, or finding something that makes it easier. And that's what we did. I looked at Danielle, she told me what the problem was, and we figured out, okay, we can automate this. So what we built in Feedback Panda, just really to do it quickly, was a SaaS that is both a CRM and a templating engine for student feedback and for students, that these people could plug into their web-based classrooms and can easily click a button, get feedback immediately, modify it a bit, send it off. What took 2 hours was now 5 minutes. And that was the value proposition that we had with the business. So we started this in 2017. We kind of built the prototype. In 2017, Danielle tested it. She was the first user. And then a couple months after we ironed out all the kinks and the bugs, we released it. We grew it within 2 years to 5-something thousand customers, $55,000 monthly recurring revenue. And that's when people got really interested in our business. And we got acquired by a private equity company called SureSwift Capital for what I'm allowed to say is a life-changing amount of money. And that was that. After that, thank you. That was one of the most exciting things that I ever did. I guess even writing the book is exciting, but not as exciting as doing this, right? Like selling a business. Nobody ever does that. It's like all founders that get to this point never have done this before. So it was quite exciting to be in the company of people who've done this. And then over the last year, like we sold it in July of last year, I started taking the things that I learned and putting them into blog posts initially, and a newsletter, and then a podcast, because for some reason I had all this time on my hands and I really needed to do something. And then it turned out that the blog posts that I'd written, if you looked at them like from the bird's eye perspective, they almost looked like a book. So at some point I decided, all right, I might just as well turn it into a book, and that's what Zero to Sold is. It's like the condensed, or I guess expanded learnings that I had.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it's 500 pages. There's nothing condensed about this book, but it's like the 2 years of Feedback Panda plus all the misfortunes, mistakes, and errors that I made in the 2 decades before that went into this. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Love it. Thanks for the intro. That's great. It's awesome when actual problems come up almost organically, because you're kind of like scratching your own itch, and you hear it so often in successful companies. They often are born like that. Just of like Instagram was founded when founder's partner at the time was trying to take a photo on the beach, and it was just like, oh, okay, I can build this. This is useful. This is kind of useful for us, so likely to be useful for other people. One thing I want to say before we kind of dive into the book itself, and what we're going to talk about today in terms of structure, let's give a kind of high level view around the kind of structure of the book, because it's kind of broken up into the 4 stages of bootstrapping, which you kind of break down as the preparation stage, the survival stage, the stability stage, and the growth stage. And we can kind of go through, I think it'd be good to kind of dive into each one of those individually, but could you just give us like a 1 sentence, like explainer for each of those stages?
Sure. Like preparation stage is all these kind of things that happen before you actually have a business, right? It's where you figure stuff out. It's where you figure out what you're building, who you're building it for, how you build it, and how you can actually turn that into a business. That is the preparation stage. It prepares you for the struggle that is going to come. That would then start with the survival stage, when you actually launch the product. When the product is out there, you have your first couple customers, hopefully, and you hopefully retain them. And you try to find out how you can turn this product that you have into a sales process that is repeatable. You try to find the repeatable model to make this a thing that can work on its own. So that's the actual like practical figuring stuff out part. And once you've found this, once you've found a reliable, repeatable way of selling your product to people, then you come into the stability stage, where you can now, instead of working in the business, which that was what you were doing before, trying to get people to buy it, trying to make the product better, you can now work on the business and turn it into a sellable business, a business that works without you needing to be in there, or turning into an automated business so you can spend your time on the important things instead of the tedious things. And once you're beyond that stage, once it works, once it's a really good business that you could, if you wanted to, you don't have to, but you could sell to somebody else, you enter the growth stage. The point where either you keep it and you just grow it, you hire people, you build a little empire, or you want to diversify your life and you want to spend a couple months on the beach, well, then you sell it. right? Then you get acquired, or you find somebody who would like to buy your business. And that's kind of the structure of the book. That last part is the part where fewest people really know what to do, because it's just so few people compared to the rest of the inhabitants of this wonderful planet that have gone through this process, where I found a lot of things that just weren't answered anywhere else, but every single stage has a really important message somewhere in there, and we can definitely talk about all of them. I would be quite happy to.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's a really good overview, because I think for anybody like building anything, a lot of the time you just have the stage where you're currently at, like front of mind, and often you kind of get through one stage. I know kind of we've gone from one stage to the other with MakerPad, but I think reading and diving into your book, you kind of are able to maybe make decisions a bit sooner than you would if you reach that stage naturally. So you can kind of forecast what's coming, and you kind of build and tailor it accordingly. Maybe we can dive into a bit of that in a bit.
It's funny though, because in writing the book, I went through all of these stages again. Like, it's really, there's barely a difference between creating an info product book, right, which is a digital product just as well, or creating a SaaS. It differs in some key aspects, but overall, like, you still have to conceptualize. You have to find your audience and figure out what they want, and if they're willing to pay for it, and then build it, iterate, and make it something that sells itself, and then hopefully get to the growth part, which is, I guess, what I'm looking forward to at this point. But funny enough, like, Zero to Sold structurally helped build or helped write Zero to Sold. You know, like, the content that's in the book is relevant for the book ever being possible to be made. If that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
It's a meta situation here.
Very meta.
I'm just checking the book here, because I also found that the preparation stage is like half of the book. Like 250 pages of this is just the first stage, because there's so much going on. You would just want me to dive into it, like on a more granular level, or how would you like that?
Yeah, so I think one of the ones that really stood out for me, and we kind of talked this before jumping on, was actually about the audience. You mentioned about the audience and their problem. So this is something which is often like missed, and people kind of skip over that. So should we start there, or we can go wherever you want.
I love that, because that is one of the central things that I found, I wouldn't say missing, it's just misunderstood in indie hackers and new founders. Because most of us, even if we're not technical, like even if you're not a developer, if you're coming from a different background, we perceive the world around us as products. If you think about it, we see the microphone, it's a product. We see the software, it's a product. Even a bottle of water is a product, right? We don't conceptualize it as a solution to somebody's problem. So we look at the product, and we like the product, and we want to make products that other people like. That is like the basic perspective that we have. And that leads to the fact that many people start with a product. They start with the idea. Oh, I want to build this particular software, this app. I want to build an iPhone app that does this. And then they think, okay, so now I need to figure out, does this actually solve somebody's problem? So they need to figure out, is this a solution to a problem? And then they might find that it's an actual problem that somebody has. Now they need to figure out, so who has this problem? Who can I sell this to? And then they need to track back and find the people that may have this problem. And then they need to figure out, well, can I even sell it to them? And it goes down all the way, and you never really know. Like, it's always guesswork. It's always a chance that the thing you wanted to build solves nobody's problem, or that it solves someone's problem, but they have zero money or zero intent to buy anything, right? So if you look at things product first, you're always potentially building something that nobody could use, which is why I advocate turning this around and starting with an audience, and then looking at their critical problem, finding a solution that fits into their workflow, and building a product that works in the medium that your audience is active. That's like the shortest version of this I can get. But the point is, start with a group of people that you want to help. And you'll find this in Zero to Sold. I work a lot in the book trying to work the message that you really need to want to help people if you want to be a founder, or if you want to be a successful founder. Because if you're serving an audience that you don't care about, let's say you really don't like recruiters, right? That's my go-to audience. Which
Everyone likes
I'm
recruiters,
sorry.
don't they?
I'm sorry if there's anybody who feels attacked by this. I don't mean anything. It's just an example. But if you don't like recruiters and you have this idea of building a tool for recruiters, do you really want to spend the next 5 years of your life interacting on a day-to-day basis with the people you don't care about? Starts with that, right? Find a group of people, an industry or a tiny niche, or just like football fans or people who like coffee or whatever. It can be any kind of group of people, but find a group of people that you care about, that you actually want to help, that you want to empower. And I'm currently working on a framework for this, like to actually have a step-by-step actionable guide to go through the audiences that you're interested in and figure out which ones of them are good ones and which ones of them are maybe not as good, even though they sound interesting. But the shortest version I can say this is find an audience that you care about, find an audience that is big enough for you to actually build a business in, but small enough so you don't get competition from the likes of Google and Microsoft. Find an audience that it has interesting problems, and find an audience that is willing to actually pay for solution to their problems. It's like the most basic way to boil it down. Because
I like it.
if all of these things are mostly true, then you have a group of people that you can now drill into and figure out, okay, how can I serve these people? How can I help them? Because if you have an idea of a product, it's unclear if that actually helps them. But if you ask people in a group that you've found, that you're interested in, what are your biggest problems? You will hear the same things over and over again. You will feel like there will be common threads throughout these conversations, and you have to have conversations. So another big thing, you need to actually be part of this community. So when it comes to communities, you need to embed yourself in the places where these people hang out. You need to start talking to them. You need to start contributing to their cause, and then you will get the actual information that you're looking for. And I also already see a question by Francisco here. Is there any step pre-finding a potential niche? Yes, there is. And I've done this with a couple of mentees. I've been mentoring people over the last couple months. I've stopped recently because I'm actually getting into burnout territory by just talking to too many people about too many of their problems. But I've taken a week of vacation now, so I'm better. But if you, and I did this with them, so that's why I'm saying this. If you look at your life, just really look at a day in your life and look at all the things that you're doing, you will figure out that you're actually part of a lot of communities and a lot of niches already. Like, look at this. Like, I'm a podcaster, right? So I run a podcast, part of podcasting community. I like drinking tea, so I'm a tea aficionado. I know a lot about tea. So all of a sudden, there's this group of people that I'm interested in. I really don't like cold showers. So that's another group of people. I mean, some of them may be comical, but another one, I'm an indie hacker. I'm a software developer. I'm a writer. I'm an author of a book that is self-published. So I'm a self-published author, and I love having a good computer. So I'm an Apple fan, right? And all these kind of things I'm part of. So if you just take some time to reflect on all the groups that you're already part of, you will figure out that there may be 30, 40, 50 audiences that you're already a member of, even though you may never have thought about it. Just a tea example, right? I've had a person figure out that they really love coffee, and they love coffee to an extent that most people don't. Like, they import it from different countries because they really like specific tastes, and they have not only one coffee machine, they have like 4 different ones, so they can brew it to the right temperature at the perfect like pressure and stuff. So these people, they're already domain experts in their niche audience that they could potentially serve. And if you do this with yourself, and if you do this with the people around you, and like I did with Danielle, like she was the online teacher who we solved the problem for. If you do this on that level, you will find a lot of potentially interesting audiences, and then you really have to do it step by step. And that's the thing I'm developing right now, really the actionable part. Can they pay for the things that they need solved? Do they have interesting problems? Do I really care about these people? Do I want to lift them up? Do I want to empower them? And if you find these things, then you start talking to people. Then you go into these groups, Facebook groups, Twitter communities, forums like Indie Hackers. There's a forum for plumbers and pipe fitters in the United Kingdom. I checked that because I thought, what's a weird audience? Like there's a gigantic forum where they all exchange little tips and tricks on how to do like plumbing and stuff. So if you want to serve those people, you will find them. And you will need to like really embed yourself in the community. And then you figure out what their critical problem is. And you validate that with them. And then comes the next step, which is that you find a solution. And as a solution, I'm almost done with the 4 steps here. A solution is not a product. It's important for me to point that out. So we're really looking at audience, problem, solution, product. These are 4 distinct things. A solution is a way to solve somebody's problem conceptually. Like you don't need to tell them, I'm going to build an app for you. Doesn't matter. The problem is I have these 4 databases and I need to write a report about it, about the data. That's their problem. So it doesn't matter if it's an app, if it's an installable executable on your desktop, or if it's a SaaS product, doesn't matter. If you take those 4 databases and you generate a report that works for them, that is your solution. How you do it doesn't matter. And how you do it is also something you need to explore at a later point. So you find your solution, your conceptual approach, validate it again with the same people that you talked to before, and then you dive into the product. So we've just talked about 3 steps that had 0 building, right? No coding, no coding, nothing. It was talking to people, figuring out who you are part of, which communities you're a part of, and talking to people first about the problems and then about your conceptual solution. And that's what the preparation stage should be. And we did this with Feedback Panda. Worked super efficient for us. I did this with a couple of my mentees. It's been working significantly better than the things they did before. So there's some belief that this might be a much more efficient approach because on every step along the stage, you have a valid and a validated foundation, right? You start with an audience. You know these people are there because you're one of them. You take their most critical problem. You know it's critical because they told you, and then you solve it. And if that's validated, well, those people told you this is a good idea to their critical problem they would pay for, better if they commit. But even then, you build the product. You don't build the thing first and throw it at people. You take the people and they guide you into what they really need.
Got it. I think that's just such a great summary, and it definitely applies more than ever. We can probably touch on this at the end, but now that no-code tools are in the state that they are, and they're so good that you can build things so easily. Often this entire 4-step process you just outlined is just neglected altogether, and people are often building, get bored, like discard, like build, get bored, discard. So yeah, kind of that flips on its head, and I think that's a great way to explain it. So is it important to find a critical problem in a niche that one already has experience in, or does it not matter?
I believe that you should either be an expert or be really, really close to an expert when you are in a niche and you solve that critical problem. Because if you're not, then you're way behind anybody else who's targeting this niche, right? You can become an expert. Like, I'm not an expert podcaster, so I wouldn't build a podcasting software, but Justin Jackson is an expert podcaster and an expert software builder, or like a founder. So building Transistor was obviously the thing for him to do. And he can reliably, with his partner, obviously build the business out knowing that he's an expert in the field. So I feel you should try to be an expert or be in the proximity and have access to an expert. Feedback Panda, the example is the same. I'm a software engineer. I'm good at building things. Danielle was the expert. Like, she knew exactly what the problem was because she felt it herself. She knew exactly that everybody else, every other teacher serving these kind of schools had the exact same problem because they were all teaching the same centralized curriculum. So there was nothing different between them. They had the exact same problem. And she knew that everybody else was already talking about this. People already had this problem and were vocal about it. And if you are not that deep in a niche, you need to find somebody who is. Or you need to spend a lot of time becoming this and then start your business. Otherwise, I think there's a big risk that you might just implode because there's so much to learn. Business itself is a hard thing to build. So you will need to learn how to do that. Then you need to learn how to do user interfaces, and you need to learn how to do customer acquisition. You need to learn so much. It would be good that you already know something, and that would be in the niche. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because we often see it where if you kind of diversify yourself too much out of your kind of area of expertise, yeah, you might get so far, but then you're always gonna drop off. And somebody, like you mentioned before, with that domain expertise is just gonna beat you 10 times out of 10. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good way of describing it.
I mean, get a
And
co-founder, right? It's always, if you can get a co-founder that is an expert, or that can, if you're the expert that can supplement with marketing or development or like user interface kind of stuff, UX, great. Like, you don't need to do this alone. And that was one of the things that I painfully learned. And I'll be talking about this on my podcast this week. I had a very stressful time yesterday recording this because it was a very emotional thing, talking about my own shortcomings, my own mistakes there. But we didn't hire. Like, we were 2 people founding the business, and 2 years later we were still 2 people. In the beginning we had 0 customers, and then we had 5,000. That was pretty stupid.
wow.
And I'm the one responsible for it. Danielle always told me, we need to hire you. You need a customer service agent. You need another engineer. You can't do this alone. I was like, I could do everything. Yeah, well, shouldn't have. Like, I was getting anxious. I was stressed. I got burnout. I got physical symptoms. I'm still working through those at this moment. Like, it's crazy. It's a year later. I'm still there physically. Whenever an intercom thing, like an intercom window opens somewhere, I get like intercom PTSD. It's not a joke. Like, I get heart rate goes up, and I get this feeling here because at some point customer service was such a chore that I had physical responses to it. So get somebody to build the business with you, and when you feel anxious, hire people to do the things that feel tedious and anxious inducing. This is a really important message, because I messed myself up with that. Just want people to know that.
Yeah, that's really good to know. How would you go from, so let's say you've done all the things you said, you found the problem. When is it a good time to move to actually start putting the product together? When does that happen? When do you move on to the next step?
Well, yeah, you can overdo the preparation stage as well, right? You can overdo validation calls, and it's different for every business. Obviously, some businesses, it's very clear from the beginning that your audience is there, the critical problem is detectable and detected, solution fits the workflow that people already have, and you can build a product in the medium that people have. So you only really have to validate with a couple people, maybe a dozen people, and you figure out, okay, we should really build something. There's pull from the market. Also a thing that Justin Jackson has been saying a lot in his newsletter, like he's been talking about the pull, right? If people say, okay, I need this, and they sign up and they stick with it, even if it's on a free trial or something, but they keep using it, right? Then you know there's something there. And I would suggest not spending more than maybe a month on this whole validation, really, as a random number I'm just pulling out of my head right now, because if you line up calls with people, it will take some time, right? It will take a week to get people to schedule call appointments, you to chat with them, and then for you to actually dive through the information and figure out, like, is this something that I should be doing, or was the reception lukewarm? Did people say, nah, I don't need it, right? You still need to do some work both before and after a conversation with a customer, both in preparing for the call and in taking the data that you got from the call. But if you're doing this for more than a month, you may be procrastinating on actually getting to the next stage. And with no-code tools being so explicitly simple to build a first prototype that you could then show the people that you had your solution validation calls with, right? Build the first version of the product and show them it's supposed to look like this, even if it's just like a click dummy. Something where people just see, oh, you would click here, and then this would happen, and this would happen. Is this what you need? Is this what you would use? And people say, yes, this is exactly what I want, or no, this doesn't make sense at all. Having an actual product or a fake product or prototype to some degree is incredibly valuable to be able to get out of the preparation stage at some point. Because at some point you need to release, right? At some point you need to have a price. At some point you need to have an integration with, I don't know, Paddle and Stripe or whatever. And people need to be able to pay for your product. And that needs to happen quite quickly, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. But still, you need to do this thinking part before, right? You shouldn't start building, but you should start building quite soon. Hope that makes sense.
Like it. So we've now kind of identified a problem. Maybe we've built the prototype. Maybe we've got a few like early adopted customers that come on and they're paying. This kind of moves us through into what you call the survival stage. So what is the first step in survival when you've got paying customers and you have to actually start like building in features? Maybe it's like one step beyond kind of your prototype and MVP. It's working, but maybe it's quite like janky. And then you're thinking about what do we need to build? We've probably built the core functionality of the version 1 in your prototype. So does it do the exact thing, or the one main function that I had in my head that this should do?
Yeah.
And the one thing I wanted to touch on here is building the right things, because I know this is often something which I think it's like a constant battle when you're building anything. It's like, am I focusing my time on building the right features? Like, am I spending my time effectively? So should we dive into that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's two chapters, or I guess a number of chapters, but two sections in Zero to Sold. One is building the right things, and the second one is building things right. So it's right. You can build the right things, but build them wrongly, and it's still kind of breaks the application. But let's start with building the right things. I think the moment you have people, both from the beginning when you had these first customer exploration conversations, to when you actually have customers, both trialing customers and paying customers, communication is the central function of you as an entrepreneur in that stage. Talking to people. Like later at some point, like when you're in the stability stage or in growth, you can delegate that to other people. You can say, oh yeah, we've got a customer service agent here and a product development person there, and they do the thing, and I'm just like doing the highly intellectual work on where the company should go, but not at this stage. The moment you throw yourself into actually having the business running, you need to talk to every single of your customers, if you can, right? Provided that you're building a B2B thing. If you have a B2B, B2BC model, which is like to individual agents, or a B2C to private customers, like selling these things at scale, different story. But if you're doing B2B, and I guess if you're selling to freelancers and stuff like that, you need to talk to people as much as you can. You need to look over their shoulders, see how they use your product, see where they fail, see what they expect, talk to them about things that don't work just yet, talk to them about things that work well, and things they would need to integrate your product even further into their workflow, into their lives. And these conversations will unearth a lot of feature requests. That's always what's going to happen. People will either reach out to you and say, hey, why doesn't this? And they say, oh yeah, it's on the roadmap. Or they will tell you, this is not what I wanted. This is not as unusable for me right now. It's a great idea, but it's not really, it doesn't fit into the workflow, right? At the beginning of your product, I have a CSV file and I need to have a PDF at the end. Why is there only a PNG? Like as an example, a really simple one, but stuff that doesn't work just yet. So you need to figure out which of these things are important. And there's a lot of ways of doing this, like feature prioritization frameworks. There's plenty of them out there. It starts with, I guess you can do an Eisenhower matrix, this whole thing that has urgency and importance, like these 4 fields, right? Urgent and important is the one you want to do immediately. Important but not urgent is something you need to do at some point, and not important and urgent is something you want to delegate, and the other thing you completely neglect. You can do this with the feature list that you've gotten from your customers, and there's many others. Different systems, like there's Kanban things and different kind of approaches to this. Scoring methods are there, like telling you a scoring effort that you would need to put into the project or this particular feature against the potential demand or impact. Many of these things I've written extensively about this because I feel it's important. We had some sort of scoring in our business. Like we had, is this something that would impact all of our customers right now? If so, it would already get a thumbs up. Is this something that would make it significantly more usable? Would get a thumbs up. If it would be both, I would work on it immediately. Right? Some simple scoring like this makes a big difference, because if one of your customers, let's say you have 20 customers, you have a B2B product, and one of them asks you for a feature that would only impact them, but they would be very happy. You're now at an impasse, right? Do I do this and make this customer happy, but I kind of neglect the 19 other people at the same time? Or do I say, this is something I'll build later and find something that would lift all of them up at the same time? And these decisions, you need to be aware that you actually will need to make those decisions, which is why I wrote the book, because there's so many little things in the whole journey from zero to selling your business or building this gigantic empire you want to build in the future that you never thought would come your way. But all of a sudden now you need to do these weird little charts and scoring for features, right? Yeah, this is important.
I've got a question with just in regards to pretty like personal situation as well. How does like no code, like building with no code tools change things? Because I've come from, I used to be working like product management in like a more like traditional setup with like engineers and designers. And we know that obviously then actually prioritizing your time is really important because you're working like with multiple people. But how does this change when you can build features in a really, really short amount of time? Would you still invest the same amount of time in actually preparing and like scoring these features and kind of weighing up those options? Or would you take an approach where, let's say you can build it in an hour, and then spend more time on gathering feedback on whether that would work or not?
Right. Well, funny, because it kind of feels to me like what used to be like weeks is now condensed into days, right? But you still have a difference in complexity. So I just want to maybe talk about this. There will always be things that are easily done. In a traditional software engineering environment, it could take a day or two, would be considered a low-hanging fruit. In no-code, it's an hour. It's also considered a low-hanging fruit. And then there would be things that take a week or a month, and in no-code terms, they would take a couple of days to set up and test, right? And you could still argue that by going for the things that take a bit longer, you're not going to go for the things that most other people go for. Like, they're not called low-hanging fruit without a reason. Yeah. And if you always go for the low-hanging fruit, that's the first thing that your competitor will go for as well. So if you want to stand out, you will still want to go for the more complex things that provide the potential of having massive impact for the most amount of people at the same time. Because it takes you 3 days to build this, and then you're 3 days ahead of everybody else, right? Even if things just take an hour here or there. So I feel no code changes the time span in which things work, but the underlying concept of doing the hard things first doesn't change. That being said, if you have a day in which you can do like 5 low-hanging fruits and get something out of that, do it, right? If it doesn't take you 4 weeks to do this, but just a day or two, that changes the game for product. So always keep in mind that if it's a low-hanging fruit and it's really easily done, you might actually be missing out on not doing this, right? Because it might provide some benefit that might catapult the usefulness of your product into another dimension. So, but that's why you do the feature prioritization, and that's why you try to keep it scored in some way, so you always know which is conceptually the most important thing that you could work on right now. The other things are also important, but if that is the most important thing, then maybe spending time on this is the best time spent.
Got it. No, that makes complete sense. Next question is, how do you know if you've built the right thing? So you think you're onto the right feature. How do you know if it's actually the thing you should have built?
Well, you never know. You only know after the fact. That's I guess you can always do continuous validation. Like that's a thing that I also feel is an important concept to understand. Usually, I mean continuous validation in a more holistic sense, like continuously understanding, am I still serving the right customer? Am I still having fun at building the business? Am I still doing the things right? Are people moving away? Is my industry still there? Am I serving people, or did they all lose their jobs just now? That is continuous validation, but you can also do this on a feature level. Like you can actually discuss particular features with your customers. You can say, I want to build this. And there's so many ways, right? There's always the fake button. And then you measure how many people click on that button. I don't like this because to me that's trickery. It's like getting people to build up their hopes. Oh, I can do this now. And nothing happens, right? I don't like this. But you can do this with an actual meaningful conversation with your customers. And particularly in this stage where you have a direct connection, hopefully a direct connection to your customers through things like Intercom or other tools in the same space that allow you to chat with them, or you have an email back and forth with them, or you actually have a personal relationship with people through Twitter or whatever, right? Where you can actually talk to people, you should. And you should talk to them, I want to build this. Here is the sketch of what it's going to look like. Does it make sense to you? And they will say, yeah, maybe. Or they say, yeah, this is awesome. And then you get some kind of validation. But until you have it in the product, and until people are using it and using it well for the purposes that they have, it's a guess. That's why you score these things. It's almost like each of these scores should have some sort of confidence multiplier. And there are scoring methods that actually have this in there. There's scoring methods for feature prioritization that say, I am this confident that my assumption is correct. And then you multiply it in, and it changes the ranking of the features by how confident you are. So trying to increase your confidence is key. And doing this, the easiest way is actually talking to people.
And how would you bring in and factor in the key customers that you've got? So let's say you've got like a really hardcore user base, and they're requesting features, they're power users. How would you like prioritize features for them weighed up against the customers that are, say, more likely to churn, for instance, in a SaaS environment? Does that weigh in to what you build?
Wow, yeah, that's it's definitely a problem. We had this too. Like, we had a couple of teachers that were really, really prolific. Like, they would teach for 12 hours a day. And that means 24 pieces of feedback that they would need to write. And they would teach every single day. So they would have like literally thousands of feedback after a couple months, thousands of like records in the database in our system. And then there were people, like you said, normal users who taught like an hour or two every couple days. So they were by far not as professional, if you look at it that way. So when our power users came to us and they requested a feature, we always really, really stepped back and thought about, okay, it's going to make them happy. That would be cool because they also have some sort of elevated standing in the community, so they could be evangelists for a product. But does it impact everybody else in some way? And if it did in some way potentially help other people too, we would build it. But if it was only something for them, like I don't know, like a PDF export of something, or like a reporting on their availability times or something that only they would need. A normal teacher would never need this, but they would want that for their optimization strategy. We wouldn't build it. Or at least we wouldn't build it into the product as a feature. We would build it into the backend system as something that I could give people on request. And we try to keep it as simple and clear as possible, particularly with administrative stuff. We even didn't put it into the program or the app for people to do it by themselves. We put it into a backend system, so people would need to reach out to us to get, like, I don't know, stuff undeleted or restored, or they set back to a prior version. You know, these kind of things. People save something and they wrote over some text that they wanted to get back. We had the means to do it, but we didn't put it into the front end. We had it in our system and we could do it for them on demand. So we would try to keep it, keep those features on a need to request basis.
Got it. And I think as we're kind of gobbling up this hour pretty quickly, I think we need to break this down to multiple sessions because we could go on forever.
I guess so.
But these two sections are obviously really, really important because like preparation stage and survival stage is, you need to get through these to even give yourself a chance. So
yeah, absolutely.
Another question on like the power users. So there's lots of like famous books and quotes about finding those first like 100 customers, or like first 1,000 customers that are really going to love your product. How do you turn, or how did you do it at Feedback Panda, where you turned those 100 or 1,000 customers into evangelists for your product? And how did you use, or I don't want to say leverage, it sounds like a horrendous word into talking about like people who love your product, but how did you get those people, how do you use those people to find more of them?
Okay. Wow, I have a lot of answers for this. So, and I think leverage is fine because you don't use them, right? Then they're not a means to an end. They are an end. They are your best customer, right? You want to serve them, and by allowing them to evangelize, they make your product better. So if more people come in, you can hire more people, you can hire more customer support, so they get help more in the future. So I guess leverage it's a thing you can recontextualize as something positive here. But so what did we do? First off, we helped them super quick. In the beginning, response times, I tried to have a response time under 10 seconds to a customer service ticket. That was my thing. because I was sitting in front of the computer anyway. So I would try to be as quick as I could. And then when I responded to them and they had like a technical problem that I could solve with coding or with some sort of technical thing, I would try to solve it so quick and deploy it, the new version of the software, so fast that I could actually tell them within half an hour or an hour, so I just fixed the software, uploaded a new version, here you go. This is your bug, you reported it, I fixed it for you. And if you do this multiple times with the same person, particularly with those power users that have a lot of things that they need, you in their mind, you're working for them. You're building something for them. So there's some sort of reciprocity happening where they are opening up to you, where they are talking about you in glowing terms because they talked about this button that didn't work, and half an hour later, you actually fixed it for them. That blows people's minds, because if you ever called like a Comcast hotline or something, or Vodafone or something, right? You know how they will never help you in a million years. That's the baseline, right? That's the standard that people are expecting.
That's a really good point.
Go out of your way, they will go out of their way. And then we facilitated this. We built content that was very shareable. We had a blog with lots of content that was appealing to our customers. We built a referral system into our application that was a win-win-win referral system. The person referring would get I think a month for free. The person who was referred would get a cheaper plan. And obviously it was a win for us, because obviously now we had two customers that both got something, but in the end it was a higher number than just one customer. So, and by allowing people to actually guide the people they refer through our product, we also outsourced some of our onboarding. Like we helped people kind of help other people get into and use the product. And people did videos on YouTube showing tutorials, like taping tutorials on how to use Feedback Panda with their school, like hour-long tutorial videos that we didn't need to make because our customers made them for other customers. So that's what you get when you're empathetic, when you're giving without taking, when you're helping people right where they are, and you're fast about it. So I think that's what is, in my experience, whenever I experienced this as a customer in a SaaS tool, I never churned. This would be something, okay, I'm going to use this forever, I guess. Love these people. So that's the kind of response you want to have. And that's what you can work on by just being there, showing up.
I think that's also one of the good opportunities if you're building something using no-code tools, because you can literally fix it like in 1 second and say, okay, fixed. It's happened also multiple times where I know we've actually tried to do it at MakerPad, where somebody will put out like a question on Twitter and just say, oh, like I wish this thing existed. And like we just go and build it within an hour and just put it live, and they're like, whoa, like what?
And that's crazy. Really changes the perspective that people have of you as a company, because a company to most people is this faceless entity that sells you stuff and tries to cheat you out of your money, right? That's what most people, and that's what most big businesses are. So if you're a small business, if you are a no-coder, if you're just one person, a solopreneur, you can make this an important part of your messaging. I'm just this guy trying to help other people. And if you talk to somebody on the website, it's going to be me, and I'm going to help you. And that will turn you from this big faceless entity into somebody that everybody can relate to. Because everybody, either in their family or in their group of friends, has an entrepreneur. A person that was fed up with their job, person that wanted to help somebody else and empower somebody else, started their own business, struggled a lot, but eventually made something happen. Everybody knows somebody or has heard of somebody like this. So you want to remind people of that person that they can relate to. And you can do this by just being there for them, by actually giving them your time and making things happen for them. Even if it's just a little no-code thing that you just whipped up that solves their problem, that will change their mind forever. Your name and that tool will be burned into their minds forever in a very positive light, no matter what you do in the future. You should still do good things, but you know, the impact you can have by being kind and being helpful and supportive, it's very underestimated. Absolutely.
That's really good to hear. We found that to be really useful. Probably don't do it enough, especially if we're comparing ourselves against your 5-second reaction time. We could probably do a better job. So I'm going to bear that in mind. I'm going to write it on my wall or on like a post on my screen, so to respond to anything quicker.
Well,
We have
it's also
5.
anxiety inducing. Like if you want to hit the 10 seconds, that is also a
Okay.
stress level that you might not want to keep. But in
Yeah,
the
I mean,
beginning, when you have this energy and you don't have anybody yet to do this for you, it's a good thing to do. But you should kind of tone it down to a couple minutes, maybe an hour or something at some point later.
yeah,
You don't have to
avoid
do this for you.
intercom PTSD. I will put this recording up so we can watch it back, and I look forward to the next one.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Always happy to talk to you, of course, and to answer questions.
Thank you very much.
That's a fun. So thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for asking questions. Yeah, that was wonderful. So see you next time, I guess.
Absolutely, and highly recommend Arvid's book. I've been kind of scanning over it and diving into the things that are appropriate for us at MakerPad at the moment, and learning loads of great stuff from it. So Arvid, thanks for putting in the effort to actually extract all that information out of your brain and put it into a book. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
See you soon, and see you on the next one.